Hey guys, tonight we're visiting a surprisingly sleepy corner of Greek mythology, where the wine god Dionysus, usually known for frenzies and festivals, decides that what the ancient world really needs is a relaxation spa. Imagine this: soft olive branches swaying overhead, cicadas whispering in the distance, and Dionysus, yes, that Dionysus, padding barefoot through an olive grove, muttering about scented oils and stress relief. There's a half-built pergola made of fig branches. A pile of terracotta pots lies nearby, some of them filled with rose petals, others mysteriously empty. You're not quite sure whether he's renovating a shrine or auditioning for the ancient Greek version of a home makeover show. Of course, this is mythology, so you probably won't survive the zoning permits. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, I'd love to know. Where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge closer to Dionysus, the dry soil soft under your sandals. He's reclining on a fallen log, sipping wine that smells like it's mostly water at this point. His wreath of ivy is crooked, like he's been napping on it. Around him lie an assortment of things that might, if you squint hard, be considered spa supplies: jugs of olive oil, a woven basket of feathers, 3 seashells stacked like coasters, and what you can only assume is a goat milk foot bath. Finally, he sighs dramatically, not really looking at you. Someone with the energy to help me relax. You're not sure how that makes sense, but you nod politely. He stretches, vertebrae cracking like dry twigs. I've decided Olympus is too intense. Too much drama. Too many thunderbolts. I need a space, a sanctuary. Somewhere a god can unwind with a mild cheese and a lukewarm foot soak. You understand, right? You do not, but you pretend you do. He seems like the type who appreciates agreement over logic. Around you, the olive grove hums softly. Bees are politely ignoring you. Far off, a stream murmurs. This would all be deeply peaceful, if not for the half-finished sign Dionysus has tried to carve into a plank of olive wood. It reads, "The Temple of Snoozing, Schmearing, and Serene Screaming." The last part is crossed out. So, he says, pouring wine onto the roots of a tree in what might be a blessing or a spillage, we start from scratch. We need pools. Pillows. Silence that echoes. But first, ambience. You ask if there's a plan. He looks scandalized. Plans are for generals and mortals with schedules. We have vibes. And that is how you find yourself roped into becoming the accidental co-founder of what may be the ancient world's first half-serious, half-divine spa retreat. Somewhere between a wellness center and a particularly lazy cult. The first step, Dionysus insists, is choosing the perfect location within the olive grove. We need somewhere where the wind sings lullabies, he says, lying down directly in the path of ants. And where no one can find us unless they're either extremely lost or deeply in need of exfoliation. He gestures to a shaded glen not far off. A spring bubbles nearby, with a flat stone just perfect for reclining. There, he says. That's where we'll put the steam cave. Or a shrine to naps. Or both. Mainstream historians agree that Greek mythology, especially around Dionysus, blended ecstatic ritual with pastoral settings, often involving retreats into the wilderness where followers would experience altered states of mind. But this version? This sleepy, spa-obsessed god is definitely on the fringe side of the mythological canon. As you begin gathering stones for a makeshift footpath, Dionysus has opinions about textural foot stimulation. He tells you of the time he tried to introduce soft lighting to Hades. Candles, he says, shaking his head. Hades used them all for moodiness. No appreciation for ambience. A squirrel drops an olive near your head. You flinch. Dionysus yawns. This place needs a name, he mutters. Something serene, but also slightly ridiculous. Like the Elysium of Elbows. Or Sparatus Lost. You try not to smile, but it's too late. See, he beams. You're already relaxing. In the distance, a faint flute melody plays, someone practicing badly. The sound drifts lazily through the trees, as if even the music is trying not to try too hard. You sit beside Dionysus as he begins sketching vague architectural plans into the dirt with a vine. None of them make sense. One is just a square labeled snoring pavilion. Another might be a labyrinth. Or a bathhouse. Or both. Historians still argue, he murmurs sleepily, whether this place was ever real. Whether it existed physically, or just in the minds of those who needed it. But we know better, don't we? You nod. A breeze rustles the branches overhead. Somewhere nearby, a tortoise sneezes. And that's when he declares, with a triumphant yawn, that tomorrow, they'll begin auditions. 4 nymphs. 4 harpists. For a man named Greg who claims to be half manticore and entirely relaxed. But for tonight, you rest against the olive tree. The sun dips low. The god of wine has already dozed off mid-sentence. And the spa, this odd little haven of feathers, fermented grapes, and god-sized naps, begins to breathe softly into being. You wake the next morning to the sound of what can only be described as a sluggish audition process. Dionysus is perched on a rock, laurel crown sliding forward over one eye, as a trio of river nymphs half-heartedly demonstrate their waterfall whispering abilities. Each takes a turn swishing water through their fingers while humming in minor key. It's oddly effective, though one of them keeps splashing the others when she forgets she's not a sea nymph. You're seated nearby with a clay tablet and a stylus, tasked with evaluating ambience on a scale from mildly soothing to could induce a nap in a Spartan. Dionysus claps once, slowly. Next, he calls, already halfway through a fig. A harpist lumbers forward. He looks like he once angered Apollo and was punished with eternal busking rites. His instrument has one string missing and a suspicious vine coiled through the frame. He strums experimentally, and the resulting sound is less lullaby and more existential question. Dionysus leans over to you and murmurs, "You ever fall asleep out of pure confusion? That's a market we haven't tapped yet." He thanks the harpist, not unkindly, and waves in the next applicant, a large satyr with a sleep mask perched jauntily on his horn. "I'd like to apply for chief officer of napping," the satyr says. "My resume is this." He lies down, snores once, and doesn't move. You and Dionysus exchange a look. Hired. With the initial staff mostly horizontal, the god begins explaining his deeper vision. "The world is tired," he says. "Too many wars. Too many philosophical debates. Too much shouting about honor and oaths. What we need, what they need," he gestures vaguely toward the distant mortal realm, "is a place to be dramatically relaxed." You suggest he could always just encourage longer naps. He shakes his head solemnly. "No, no. This has to feel sacred. Ceremonial. Like entering a temple, but the only offering required is letting someone rub warmed olive oil on your temples while a turtle hums." You begin sketching roles for other positions. There's now a mood facilitator, a vibe oracle, and someone just called Greg. No one knows what Greg does, but he showed up carrying a throw pillow and has a gentle energy no one can argue with. Historically, Dionysus was indeed a god of transformation. His cults were known to induce altered states through wine, ritual, and ecstatic dance. But here, that transformation is less wild ecstasy and more a slow, full-body sigh. Still, not everyone agrees on how Dionysus was worshipped. Scholars debate whether his rituals were seasonal harvest affairs or full-on identity meltdowns. Here, in this sleepy grove, it's something in between. One moment you're helping stack lavender-scented linens, the next you're weeping over how soft moss can be. The grove hums with quiet purpose. A chorus of bees lazily explore the eucalyptus trees now planted by one of the more enterprising nymphs. You overhear a pair of satyrs arguing about pillow firmness in tones usually reserved for philosophical treatises. And then Dionysus introduces the 9 gentle sounds. This, he says, holding up a seashell, is the sound of serenity. Hear that low whoosh? That's what relaxation tastes like. You listen. It mostly sounds like the ocean politely clearing its throat. There's also a rock that emits a deep thrum when struck, a tortoise shell filled with pebbles that mimic gentle rain, and a long reed whistle that's supposed to imitate a breeze. Mostly it sounds like a confused goose. Still, the god is pleased. This will be the soundtrack, he declares. We'll play it during our opening ceremony. Guests will enter barefoot, draped in silks, and be met with gentle music and immediate questioning about their emotional baggage. You glance over at a satyr trying to balance incense sticks on his horns. It's unclear whether he's practicing mindfulness or just playing a weird game of spa Jenga. As the sun begins its descent, casting warm gold over the grove, Dionysus sprawls out dramatically on a linen-strewn chaise made of palm fronds. You ever think, he murmurs, that maybe the gods just want to be mortal for a weekend? Not for the glory. For the naps. You nod. There's something achingly human in the way his eyelids droop just as he says it. And though the spa is still little more than dreams and herbs and one particularly ambitious water feature made out of a hollow log, it already pulses with possibility. You wander over to the corner where the harpist has retuned his strings and now plays something low and soft. The melody drifts over a group of resting nymphs, and even the bees seem to slow down. Behind you, Dionysus is whispering lullabies to a pear tree. You don't question it. By the 3rd day of spa development, if you can call it that, you've stopped questioning why a goat is in charge of aromatherapy. His name is Thymios, and he's surprisingly competent. He wears a tiny wreath of rosemary around one ear and has devised a system of scent dispersal that involves dried herbs, heated stones, and occasional sneezes. Dionysus watches proudly as Thymios demonstrates how to waft chamomile smoke in a figure-8 motion. The smoke curls gently through the grove like a sigh from a sleepy cloud. See, the god beams. No opposable thumbs. Pure talent. You nod, scribbling, hire more goats, in the corner of your clay notes. The checklist beside it includes tasks like dig foot bath, order more goose feathers, and teach turtles how to hum in unison. That last one might be aspirational. Today's big project, constructing the first proper relaxation chamber. Dionysus has decided it will be a semi-underground grotto, cool, dim, echoey. The sort of place you could lie down for 5 minutes and wake up 3 centuries later, ideally refreshed. The building materials consist of river-smoothed stones, moss that may or may not still be damp, and vines that are somehow both decorative and load-bearing. You're pretty sure no architect was consulted. Still, it works. Kind of. The entrance is flanked by 2 carved wooden signs, one reads, "Show," and the other, "Enter with the intention to forget something." Inside, the space is naturally chilled. The moss underfoot cushions each step, and the faint trickle of a nearby stream plays background music without needing any rehearsal. Dionysus insists this room be reserved for deep serene silence and whispering arguments about the nature of dreams. You ask what happens if someone snores. Immediate elevation to mystic in residence, he replies. Historically, caves and grottos did hold religious significance in ancient Greece, seen as places of mystery, prophecy, or divine birth. Yet this one seems destined more for eucalyptus wraps than oracles. Dionysus wanders the space, occasionally humming to test the acoustics. His voice bounces gently, like it's afraid to interrupt itself. Outside, the rest of the spa grows in odd, sleepy directions. A nap pavilion is being built from driftwood and fennel stalks. A satyr is stuffing goose feathers into cushions while mumbling about lumbar support. One of the nymphs has begun painting murals of relaxing historical tragedies, like the time a Spartan accidentally took a week off. Back in the grotto, Dionysus lies on a cool slab of stone and begins reciting a new list, the 7 layers of relaxation. They go something like this. The first yawn. The itch you don't scratch. The blanket that's slightly too heavy. The spot where your spine sinks just right. The song you think you dreamt. The gentle weight of forgetting what time it is. The moment before you realize you fell asleep. You suspect he's making it up, but you don't care. The way he says it, half-lidded and dreamy, makes the room feel thicker somehow, like the air itself has been steeped in lavender tea. You notice Greg, the quiet maybe manticore, standing silently in the corner, eyes closed, arms out like he's absorbing the room's frequency. He opens one eye and gives you a slow, contented nod. Historians still argue, Dionysus murmurs, whether relaxation was ever a virtue in the ancient world. Was it idleness or insight? Weakness or wisdom? You consider this while adjusting a cushion under your neck. Your bones feel like sandbags, heavy in the best way. There's no work left to do today, at least nothing urgent. Even the bees have taken the afternoon off, hovering but not harvesting. A soft breeze drifts through the open archway, bringing with it the smell of thyme, a suggestion of honey, and what might be the ghost of a lullaby. You hear the soft footfalls of Thymios as he trots by with a fresh bundle of herbs in his mouth, followed by a small choir of frogs practicing their hums. One of them misses a note, but no one corrects it. Outside, Dionysus has begun describing his next vision, a floating nap platform suspended over the spring, tethered by vines, and accessible only by stepping stones chosen for their foot temperature neutrality. You drift somewhere between thoughts as he speaks, the words pooling around you like warm water. The grotto breathes. You breathe with it. And in that moment, with moss beneath you and myths above, you realize the strange, sleepy spa is working, not just as a sanctuary for gods or mortals, but as a rebellion against urgency itself. A place where time drips slowly, like resin from a pine tree, sticky with peace. You're awoken the next morning not by noise, but by the absence of it. No frogs humming. No satyrs snoring. Not even the rustle of Thymios chewing his usual breakfast bouquet. When you finally emerge from the grotto, you find everyone frozen mid-task, eyes wide, mouth slightly agape. Dionysus stands at the center of the grove, his arms outstretched, a look of utter delight on his face. Floating before him, hovering a good 3 cubits off the ground, is a massive, luminous orb. It pulses softly, like a giant jellyfish made of moonlight and chamomile steam. I call it, Dionysus whispers reverently, the sphere of unbotheredness. You blink. Did you invent magic? No, he says. I repurposed it. Apollo was using it to store light poetry. I stole it, emptied it, and now it emits peace. You're welcome. The orb hums faintly, releasing a scent you can only describe as rain after a nap. As you draw nearer, you feel your shoulders drop 2 inches. Your mind softens. Somewhere, a worry you didn't even know you had simply gives up and dissolves. You sit on the grass. So does everyone else. Even the bees land gently on moss pillows and buzz in perfect fifths. Later, once everyone has resumed some degree of motion, Dionysus explains his newest plan, daily rituals beneath the sphere. These aren't your average ancient Greek ceremonies, no shouting, no sacrifices, no ominous masks. Instead, they involve synchronized yawning, slow breathing competitions, and something called the emotional steam bath, which, as far as you can tell, is just sitting near Thymios while he exhales into a towel. One of the rituals includes telling the sphere a mild inconvenience from your week. You go first. I misplaced my sandal yesterday. The orb pulses blue, then green, then a contented lilac. The moment is held, acknowledged, then released. Somehow, you do feel lighter. Historically, it's true that Dionysian cults embraced altered states and ritual theater. But nothing ever mentioned spheres of glowing empathy. Then again, historians still argue whether Dionysus was a liberator of the soul or just the ancient world's most eccentric party planner. You lean toward the former. Though, admittedly, today's party involves herbal foot soaks and emotionally supportive frogs. The orb inspires a flurry of new ideas. A pair of nymphs begin designing an introspective fern garden, with paths meant for slow walking and slower thinking. Each plant is selected based on how likely it is to spark existential but calming thoughts. A philosopher from a neighboring grove shows up unannounced, curious about the sphere. Within 10 minutes, he's curled up beside it muttering something about cognitive surrender. No one has the heart to wake him. Dionysus commissions a new set of togas dyed in sleep-inducing colors. The first batch is a soft sage green, trimmed with calming gold thread and lightly scented with valerian. The satyrs parade in them proudly, though one keeps tripping on the hem and muttering about how dignity is overrated anyway. One nymph, Nyla, takes it upon herself to choreograph a daily relaxation processional. It's essentially a very slow, very quiet parade. You carry a tray of scented oils. Greg carries a cloud of butterflies. Someone walks backward, whispering compliments to each guest. The sphere floats above it all, glowing faintly, humming its indecipherable lullaby. Later that evening, Dionysus decides to test its long-term effect on sleep. We'll sleep under it, he declares, and dream with more style than anyone before us. You arrange your bedding beside the sphere. Thymio settles near your feet, emitting a scent not unlike sleepy hay. Greg arranges his wings into a pillow. The frogs form a circle and begin humming. And slowly, one by one, you all drift off. You dream of nothing. And that is exactly the point. When you wake, you feel lighter, as though some mythic weight has shifted off your chest. Dionysus is already up, twirling in slow circles beneath the orb. I told you, he says, looking like someone who just invented bedtime. This is the future. You want to argue. Maybe quote Plato. Maybe suggest some structural reinforcements for the footbath. But then you stretch, and something in your spine purrs. And you realize, with a sleepy kind of clarity, that this may be the one Greek myth that doesn't end in war, heartbreak, or overly complicated genealogy. It ends in stillness. And lavender. Today begins with a cucumber falling gently onto your forehead. Not from a great height, thankfully, just from a passing nymph who's currently experimenting with aromatherapeutic snack application. Her name is Merope, and she insists that the future of skincare lies in edible moisturizers. You're not sure she's wrong. As you brush cucumber off your brow and sit up beneath the soft glow of the sphere, Dionysus is already mid-monologue. I've had a vision, he announces, arms flung wide like he's trying to hug the sky. We need a bathhouse. But not just any bathhouse. A sanctuary of steam. A temple of soakery. A shrine of suds. You blink, still groggy. You mean, like a public bath? Yes, he exclaims. But with better snacks and fewer expectations. Historically, Greek bathhouses were bustling social centers, places to wash, gossip, and be publicly philosophical while mostly naked. Dionysus wants all that, but with beanbag seating and a no-questions-asked napping policy. Construction begins immediately, albeit with the usual flair. The roof is made of translucent seashells. The heating system involves sun-warmed river rocks, gently rolled down a slope by interns, by which we mean satyrs with nothing better to do. The water is infused with mint, lemon balm, and whatever petals happen to drift past during setup. By mid-afternoon, the bath of light regret, his name, not yours, is complete. There's no formal entry fee, just a whispered apology to the wind and a small offering of socks, sandals, or particularly pretty pebbles. Guests drift in like autumn leaves, shedding their worries along with their tunics. Inside, the air is heavy with steam and herbal oils. Conversations are slow and soft, often trailing off into sighs. Somewhere in the corner, Greg is half submerged in a basin labeled "Creatures of Ambiguous Origin Only," looking deeply at peace. In a secluded nook, Dionysus has installed a reflection chamber. You're not entirely sure what it's for, but a few guests go in weeping and come out smiling vaguely, so that seems promising. While the bath fills with murmurs and steam, you wander into a side room where Merope is now testing her olive oil and oat facial rejuvenation plaster. It smells like a breakfast that doesn't respect boundaries. Thymios trots by, dropping bundles of mint into each tub with the solemnity of a priest distributing blessings. He's even started wearing a little towel over one shoulder, embroidered with the word "softness is strength." As night falls, the bathhouse begins its secondary function, dream enhancement. Guests lie back in the warm water under floating lanterns shaped like ancient philosophers. You're not sure who approved the lantern of Pythagoras winking suggestively, but it does give the room a certain Dionysus spa. A soft voice recites lullabies in a dialect no one quite recognizes. The water shifts with the rhythm, like it's agreeing. You overhear someone near the eucalyptus basin saying, "Historians still argue whether the ancients had dream therapy. But I swear, I just had a nap that solved 3 of my unresolved metaphysical dilemmas." You can't help but smile. Out on the porch, Dionysus sits wrapped in an oversized towel, sipping an infusion of pear blossom and honeyed thyme. He looks over at you, eyes sparkling. "I think," he says, "we've stumbled into something special. A mythology of gentleness. A theology of taking it slow." You nod. Then point at the cluster of turtles near the foot basin. They're learning to hum in harmony. He grins. I knew they would. That night, the bathhouse stays open until the stars begin to yawn. A few nymphs fall asleep in the steam room, faces aglow with serenity. Thymios curls up beside a stack of folded towels and snores softly, smelling faintly of lemongrass. And you? You sit in the warmest corner, half submerged, thinking about how odd it is that history usually remembers the gods for wars, storms, and judgment. But maybe, just maybe, the gentlest myths, the ones where everyone gets a pillow and nobody gets turned into a swan, deserve a chapter too. Morning begins not with a bang, nor a whisper, but the oddly calming thunk of someone gently dropping figs into a basket from 5 paces away. You blink your eyes open to see a group of forest-dwelling dryads holding a fig-tossing contest, scored entirely on how, aesthetically pleasing, the fruit looks mid-flight. There are no winners, only mild applause and soft giggles. The Grove of Gentle Excess, as it's now being called in hushed tones across the region, is attracting attention. Word has spread. First to curious satyrs from neighboring hillsides, mostly here for the snacks. Then to wandering philosophers, sleepy from too much debate. And now, unexpectedly, to a group of Spartan retirees, drawn by rumors of something called grape-scented stillness. They arrive in silence, grizzled and sandal-worn, expecting drills or tactical stretches. What they find instead is Thymios greeting them with a tray of chilled lavender tea and cucumber petal wraps for their shoulders. No one argues. The plan for the day? Dionysus wants to prototype his next big invention, the mythic napping pavilion. It's a dome, he explains, eyes wide with excitement, woven from the dreams of moderately content goats. You wait for clarification. He offers none. Instead, you watch as a group of volunteers, including Greg, one helpful goat, and a nymph with surprisingly good structural instincts, begin assembling a round shelter draped in veils of fog-colored silk. The entrance is flanked by 2 statues of Dionysus himself, but with closed eyes and gently smiling mouths. Inside, the pavilion is, well, cozy doesn't quite capture it. It's hush incarnate. Low beds made from layered moss. Whispering fountains. A harp that plays one note every 2 minutes. The very air seems to move in slow motion. You pick a corner and sink into it. The moss is exactly the right firmness. A breeze, scented with cinnamon and rosemary, finds you without you having to move. Above you, a series of ceiling murals depict famous myths retold through naps. Achilles, snoozing instead of storming Troy. Medea, pausing mid-revenge to lie down with a cold cloth on her forehead. Zeus, shockingly horizontal, being gently shushed by a council of nymphs. It's all wonderfully improbable. And oddly aspirational. One guest leans over and whispers, historians still argue whether ancient Greeks valued rest as much as virtue. But I say, virtue is resting. You nod solemnly, which turns into a yawn. The pavilion has only one rule, inscribed in tiny letters over the door: do not talk louder than a drowsy whisper, unless you're being attacked by bees. The bees, it turns out, are friendly here. In the soft middle of the day, Dionysus introduces a new ritual, the story sway. Participants gather in the pavilion, swaying gently while someone recites a myth. Today's tale is about a forgotten minor god of bedtime snacks who once tried to create the perfect biscuit and ended up inventing abstract regret. As the tale wraps up, you feel the collective sigh ripple through the room like a warm breeze over a still pond. To the side, a tiny frog sings a single note and then naps inside a sandal. By late afternoon, the pavilion is full. Not crowded. Just full, like a bowl that couldn't hold more calm even if you whispered in it. Somewhere near the edge, a nymph paints dreams onto thin scrolls using ink made from night-blooming flowers. Guests request theirs like spa treatments. "I'll take one peaceful confrontation with my uncle," says a Spartan, eyes already drooping. "I'll have the dream where I'm friends with the moon," murmurs a satyr. You choose the one titled, "Mildly Impressive Acts of Self-Compassion." It glows faintly in your hand. Later, you find Dionysus sitting on the pavilion steps, feeding grapes to a lizard and humming a lullaby that sounds suspiciously like a slowed-down drinking song. He looks up and smiles. "It's working," he says. You don't ask what it is. Not now. Not while your fingers smell faintly of cedarwood and your spine has never felt more politely aligned. The pavilion has no locks. It doesn't need them. Guests come and go like dreams, slow, unsure, soothed. And as the stars blink awake above the grove of gentle excess, someone lights a lantern outside shaped like a sleeping lion with a book on its head. No one questions it. This is not a place for questions. This is a place for pillows, improbable calm, and one long, collective exhale. A warm wind rustles through the grove, carrying the unmistakable aroma of roasted chestnuts and rosemary. Somewhere nearby, a satyr is humming what sounds like an extremely slowed-down version of a war march, except all the trumpets have been replaced by gentle harp plucks. You stretch luxuriously in your moss-lined bed inside the pavilion and roll out into a day that promises absolutely nothing urgent. Dionysus greets you beside a fountain shaped like a yawn. He's lounging in a tunic made of overlapping tea towels. "I think we need a library," he says without preamble. You raise an eyebrow. "Didn't you try that last week? With the whispering scrolls and the sleep-mumbling oracle?" He waves a lazy hand. "No, no. That was a dream depot. This will be different. Think books that smell like naps and only contain chapters no longer than your attention span." Soon, the construction crew, which today consists of 2 sleepy carpenters, one bard on a break from performing lullabies, and a crow with a scroll obsession, get to work. The sleepy scrollery rises in under an hour. It's half library, half nest, circular walls made of woven reeds, shelves organized by nap length, and seating options that include bean bags, lap pillows, and one extremely understanding tortoise. The catalog is, predictably, eccentric. You find titles like "Mildly Heroic Pigeons of the Peloponnesus," "How to Brew Mint Tea with Your Eyes Closed," The 10 least effective curses in mythology. One scroll simply reads, "Soft thoughts for troubled foreheads." You immediately pocket it. Thymios has taken over as librarian, mostly because he already knows where everything is and insists on reshelving scrolls in emotional color order: wistful, tepidly hopeful, melancholy. Guests wander in and whisper polite questions like, "Which scroll here helps with feeling like your sandals are too loud?" Or, "Do you have anything on how to nap through minor existential dread?" The answer is always yes. Dionysus installs a hammock corner with viewports showing slow clouds. You're not sure how they work. Possibly illusion magic. Possibly just well-placed cotton. To your surprise, the Spartan retirees are completely on board with the scrollery. One of them is reading gentle philosophies for the fiercely stubborn while softly chewing a figure. Another keeps rereading the same line from the ancient art of maybe tomorrow and nodding as if it's telling him deep secrets. Mid-scroll, you overhear two dryads debating whether the ancient Greeks really had libraries like this. Historians still argue whether libraries were meant for rest or rigor, one whispers. The other sighs and says, "This one is clearly for restorative indifference." Dionysus spends the afternoon giving impromptu readings from the slightly boring adventures of Heracles' Lost Sandal. It involves a lot of gentle missteps, an enchanted lint trap, and a talking donkey who refuses to go anywhere unless tucked into bed first. The audience sways like kelp in a tide of boredom turned comfort. At sunset, the scrollery hosts its first read and rest gathering. Guests curl into floor cushions shaped like fruit slices while soft harp music plays from nowhere in particular. A nymph named Lyra reads aloud from the myth of the half-awake hero, a tale about a demigod who saves the day by politely postponing every battle until he's finished his nap. Someone brings warm milk with cinnamon. Someone else passes around honey-soaked date pastries shaped like question marks. By twilight, no one is reading anymore. They're simply holding scrolls like comforting thoughts. Dionysus tiptoes over to where you're curled up near a reed wall. "I think," he murmurs, "we just invented passive scholarship." You smile and yawn in agreement. Outside, fireflies light the path back to the bathhouse. The pavilion lets out a sleepy groan as a satyr rolls over too dramatically in a moss bed. Somewhere in the distance, a slow, contented frog lullaby begins again, one note, then silence, then another. And you? You wander back to your nook with a scroll clutched to your chest and the quiet conviction that some myths aren't meant to be exciting. Some myths are meant to be soft, slightly crinkled around the edges, and read aloud in voices so gentle they make your bones feel like they're smiling. The next morning arrives dressed in gold-tinted fog and the low purr of a tortoise snoring gently beneath a fern. You emerge from the pavilion to find Dionysus standing in front of a new sign staked into the moss. It reads, "Today's wellness offering, philosophical mud." You squint. Is that like a metaphor? Dionysus beams. Nope. It's literally mud. But extremely thoughtful mud. Turns out, he's serious. The philosophical mud bath is a shallow spring dug behind the fig grove, filled with clay-rich earth imported, according to Dionysus, from a riverbank where oracles used to nap face down until they received visions or just forgot why they were there. The bath has tears, contemplative, mildly regretful, and existentially slippery. You step into the contemplative tear and instantly feel your ankles remembering every argument they've ever overheard. It's nice, in a weirdly mushy way. Around you, other guests begin to sink in with audible sighs. The Spartan retirees? Full immersion, eyes closed, murmuring things like, "Maybe war was just bad posture." One satyr props up a reed scroll beside the bath, reading aloud a treatise on leisure titled "Why Doing Nothing Might Actually Be Something." A dryad swirls a stick through the mud and claims she can see her future. It involves chestnut soup and no unnecessary conversations. Somewhere nearby, Thymios is hosting a silent disagreement workshop, where participants sit in chairs back to back and nod meaningfully without ever stating what they disagree on. It is, oddly, effective. A gentle debate bubbles up among guests. Was Dionysus always this into self-care? Historians still argue whether he was just a party god, someone whispers from the mud, or the original patron of post-socializing recovery. You muse on that as a small frog hops onto your shoulder, settles in, and stares at the horizon like it has something to forgive. Meanwhile, Dionysus is overseeing what he calls the cooling-off chamber. It's really just a shady nook full of fans made from palm leaves, scented with crushed mint. Guests lounge in pairs, holding hands or plush grapes, swapping old regrets like trading cards. I once challenged a muse to a pun-off. I tried to tame a Pegasus with trail mix. You add, I believed I could finish reading the Odyssey in one night. They nod solemnly. Everyone here has been too ambitious once. Later in the day, Dionysus introduces his newest creation, the apology hammocks. Each comes with a soft stuffed owl and a pre-written note you can hang around your neck while you sway. Examples include: sorry for that one thing I said during the fig crisis. I now realize you were right about the olive shortage. I nap now. Let us forget. Guests drift gently from mud to hammock to scrollery and back again, trailing faint hints of clay and chamomile. A musical trio called the Hypnotic Lute sets up near the fountain and plays a single continuous chord for an hour and 45 minutes. It's considered a hit. By dusk, a festival, if you can call it that, is underway. But instead of revelry, it's more like a mass exhalation. There are stations for slow blinking, quiet reminiscing, and intentional meandering, in which participants walk vague loops without any goal except to not trip on their own robes. One particularly bold nymph leads a procession called the Procession of No Reason, where everyone carries pillows and waves at trees. Even the trees seem to understand. You eat a soft pomegranate cookie and feel your muscles unclench one by one. The frog, still on your shoulder, finally names itself, Clovis. Clovis yawns. You do too. And somewhere in the gentle murmur of mud, mint, hammocks, and harp chords, you realize, Dionysus may not have invented the first actual spa. But this? This is a sanctuary. Not for warriors. Not for scholars. But for the gloriously undermotivated. For those who want to drift. Who want to maybe remember their dreams or maybe just hold them like fog in the palm of their hand. And as you watch a satyr gently nudge a sleeping tortoise with a flower and whisper, "Not yet, friend. Keep dreaming," you find yourself thinking. This myth might be boring. And that's exactly what makes it perfect. This morning, you wake to the soothing crunch of someone raking gravel into contemplative spirals. Turns out, it's Dionysus again, wearing what can only be described as a silk bathrobe designed for dramatic twirling. He's renamed the courtyard the quiet spiral of temporary clarity. You join him in the ritual, slow, sweeping rakes through rose-scented pebbles, each movement designed to express vague emotions like, "I once regretted refusing soup," or "I am open to forgiving my neighbor's pen flute obsession." After several loops and a snack break, figs, again, because they never run out, Dionysus leans in and murmurs, "I've decided we need a new category of rest." You blink. Isn't that what yesterday was? No. Yesterday was emotional sedimentation. Today, we explore poetic lounging. He waves his hand and suddenly, parchment-wrapped chaise lounges bloom out of the ground like very cooperative tulips. Each seat comes with a small, self-composing haiku. One of them whispers gently. My thoughts were too loud. Then I ate cheese by moonlight. Now they just hum low. A dryad lounges nearby, fanning herself with a leaf shaped like the word meh. Across from her, a philosopher has fallen asleep mid-thesis with a scroll balanced on his face and a plate of olives gently steaming beside him. It's all very poetic. And deeply loungy. Later in the morning, Thymios announces the first ever nap symposium. Attendees include nymphs, one very smug owl, a goat who only blinks in iambic pentameter, and that same Spartan retiree who has now fully embraced soft pants and indoor voices. The agenda? Topics like: how many pillows is too many? Trick question. Can you be a hero if you hit snooze? The ethics of daydreaming while standing upright. The owl delivers a keynote titled Hoot, Hoot, ZZZ, which is unanimously considered transcendent. You sit with Clovis on your lap, nibbling a sesame biscuit, as the discussion drifts toward dreams. Not prophecy, not battle omens, but dreams like wading through syrup while apologizing to a goat wearing your father's sandals. Dionysus chimes in. Historians still argue whether dreams were divine messages, or just gods making sleep more interesting. The nymphs nod solemnly, but one raises a point: maybe the gods dream too. Maybe this whole place is Dionysus dreaming of a world where no one is asked to hurry. Dionysus doesn't deny it. He just reclines further and requests someone bring him a chilled cucumber for aesthetic reasons. Afternoon arrives draped in lavender breezes and the gentle clatter of a dropped lyre. No one's in a rush to pick it up. In the scrollery, Thymios is shelving a new category: books you'll pretend to read. Titles include The Metaphysics of Marination, Chronicles of the Whispering Napkin, Plato's Sleep Journal, forged, but still calming. You find a spot under a tree, where the bark has been trained to thrum like a lullaby. You leaf through odes to slightly damp towels and laugh exactly once, gently, like a breeze through curtain linen. Nearby, a group is participating in the communal sigh, a daily ritual where everyone exhales together and pretends that fixes things. It sort of does. At twilight, as the shadows stretch long and sweet like licorice, Dionysus opens the spa's newest offering, the Hall of Deferred Intentions. It's a stone corridor lined with doors. None of them open. Each is labeled with something you once meant to do. Learn to juggle philosophically. Challenge Athena to a knit-off. Confront your weird feelings about laurel wreaths. You walk slowly past each one, read the plaques, and feel your shoulders drop with relief. Not everything must be done. Some intentions are sweeter left unbothered, gathering soft dust and gentle meaning. Outside, frogs begin their nightly sermon, half lullaby, half inside joke. Someone brings you a warm cup of herbalish tea, a Dionysian blend of chamomile, thyme, and vague promises. You sip, you smile, and you watch the stars stretch lazily across the heavens like they, too, might oversleep their celestial duties. Here, now, in this slightly soggy myth made of moss, comfort, and low expectations, you finally begin to understand. Rest is not the absence of greatness. It's the quiet, squishy foundation from which greatness yawns, stretches, and decides, maybe tomorrow. The day dawns with an oddly formal energy. Someone, likely Dionysus, but possibly Clovis, has declared this to be ceremonial slow day. You awake to the sound of conch shells being blown at half volume and a satyr politely announcing, you may now begin your gentle shambling. Today's main event? The inaugural procession of restorative absurdity. You're handed a toga stitched entirely from festival posters, a soft fig honey pastry, and a banner that simply reads, "It's fine." Dionysus greets the assembly wearing a laurel crown made of mint leaves and a belt strung with tea strainers. Today, he intones with mock gravitas, we celebrate the invention of not doing that right now. You march, if you can call it that, through the fig grove in soft formation. The satyrs play slow kazoo ballads, a nymph distributes lukewarm honey water from a bowl the size of a regrettable ambition, and someone rides a donkey that keeps stopping to contemplate pebbles. The parade ends in the amphitheater of ambivalent declarations, where guests climb onto the stage to recite oaths such as, "I solemnly swear to finish that project, eventually. I hereby declare my inbox mythical and unknowable. I might fold laundry someday, but not today, and that is sacred." You're offered a token for participation, a small pebble inscribed with your favorite excuse. Yours says, "Too cloudy to decide." Later, while lounging beneath a wisteria-draped awning, Dionysus shares his latest idea, the Unmotivational Speaker series. Today's guest, Philostratus the Even-Tempered. He begins his talk with, "Why try to win when you can nap comfortably in second place?" The crowd loves it. The owls hoot approvingly. A goat nods off. One of the Spartan retirees whispers to you, "I used to conquer cities. Now I conquer crossword puzzles, slowly." You give him a fist bump so soft it's more of a shared breeze. Midday activities include guided daydreaming with decorative scarves, olive pitting meditation circle, creative underachieving 101, where you get credit for thinking about writing a poem. You attend the last one and earn a scroll just for rhyming nectar with specter of effort. In the background, someone's composing an ode to Dionysus's feet, allegedly because they are so grounded. You wander over to the spa's newest wing, the Whisperatorium. It's a series of velvet-draped alcoves where people share their mildest worries in gentle tones. The rules are simple: you must whisper, and nothing truly alarming is allowed. Sample admissions. I think I overwatered my basil. What if my toga makes me look too approachable? Sometimes I forget why I walked into a room and then stay there anyway. In return, you receive a blessing in the form of a forehead dab with lavender oil and the assurance, "That's probably okay." As the afternoon deepens into soft plum tones, Dionysus takes center stage. Metaphorically and literally, for a new ritual, the Great Undoing. You're invited to write down one, trying too hard, thing you've been carrying. It could be a fear, a plan, a perfectionist urge. You write, "Must always be productive." Then, in a line resembling a cue for very calm cloud boarding, you approach a marble bowl filled with something between fog and whipped marshmallow. You drop your note in, watch it dissolve, and feel 3 vertebrae relax in gratitude. Historians still argue whether this ritual had any real consequence, Dionysus says, swirling the fog. But they're the sort of historians who don't understand naps. Everyone nods. Even the marble bowl seems to sigh. At dusk, as fireflies begin their hesitant ballroom routines, a final treat is unveiled, the semi-ethereal blanket fort. It spans half the courtyard, stitched together from tunics, poems, and metaphors. Inside, it smells like almond paste and library dust. Guests curl up with scrolls, moss pillows, and cups of moon milk, almond, rosewater, and just a hint of irresponsible sweetness. You settle in next to Clovis, who is now wearing a tiny hat that says co-facilitator. And as the stars begin to blink on one by one, like reluctant nightlights, you let yourself drift into the sort of rest that doesn't need explanation. You realize this whole spa is really just a myth for surrendering, gracefully, humorously, and with a cookie in hand. And isn't that what stories are for? To remind us that sometimes, even gods need to pause? You awaken to the sensation of a harp string being plucked somewhere near your ear, gently, rhythmically, as if the air itself is being tuned to a lullaby. It's Eumelos the sleep bard. He's composing a ballad called Ode to the Hour Before Breakfast, and he insists the notes must match the pace of a tortoise sighing. You stretch, slowly, as instructed by a scroll left at your bedside that reads, "Please yawn with intention today." Outside, Dionysus is perched on a crescent-shaped bench, sipping something pink and frothy from a goblet carved to resemble a lounging walrus. He raises it in greeting. "Today, we shall do as the moss does, thrive quietly." You nod, mostly because arguing requires verbs, and you're not ready for those yet. The morning's highlight is a new practice called hushed debates. 2 centaurs, one wearing scholarly spectacles and the other inexplicably holding a baguette, face off on the topic of whether dreams are divine messages or simply fermented memory. Each makes their case in the softest voice possible. The winner is chosen not by logic or facts, but by the audience's average heart rate. You lean in. The baguette-wielding centaur wins, mostly for rhythm. Dionysus claps once, delicately. We honor civil murmuring, he declares, especially when no one is entirely sure what side they're on. After the debate, you wander into the grove of mild intrigue, where every plant seems to whisper gossip at a volume only bees can hear. A nymph hands you a fruit called somniberry, sweet, cool, and rumored to induce lucid daydreams about being hugged by an idea. You eat it, naturally. As you recline on a woven mat of goat hair and well-meaning apologies, Clovis climbs onto your stomach and emits a satisfied chirp-snore hybrid. You're informed by a passing oracle that this sound is auspicious. Midday brings a new activity, slow compliment duels. Participants take turns offering the most meandering, poetic flattery they can muster. One dryad opens with, "Your aura reminds me of a wistful breeze through unclaimed laundry." A demigod counters with, "Your presence is like the second nap after a nap that already fixed things." You radiate the emotional steadiness of room temperature pudding on a rainy afternoon. A small round of applause follows. You are now certified mildly disarming. Historians still argue whether these rituals fostered true bonding or simply distracted the ancients from bigger questions, like, why are there so many kinds of olives? Later, you're invited to the Scroll Café, where each menu item is a philosophy-based snack. Plato's paradox pretzels, twisted in ways that challenge linear thought. Stoic soufflé, expected to collapse, and that's okay. Socratic sips, you ask questions, the drink provides more questions. You go with a Pythagorean pudding, geometrically pleasing, yet utterly unsure about its own flavor. Dionysus appears mid-bite and tells you he's launched a new part of the spa, the not-quite labyrinth. You go in, he explains, but instead of getting lost, you forget what you were looking for and then remember something better. It's made entirely of fabric walls printed with dreamy misquotes and unfinished sonnets. The entrance arch simply says, maybe? You accept a small lantern, lit with a firefly trained in gentle sarcasm, and enter. Inside, you meander past passages labeled, "What if you didn't answer that message yet?" A corner for people who secretly love cloudy days. The intersection of memory and snack desires. The whole maze smells faintly of ink and time. You come across a poet muttering, "I don't need closure, I need soup," and nod in agreement. By the time you exit, you've forgotten what time is and remembered that sighing is underrated. The day winds down with a group activity called staring at the sky until it blinks first. You all lie in a field, eyes half closed, pretending the constellations are judging your posture. Clovis naps on your chest. A faint breeze brings the scent of roasted pine nuts and irrational nostalgia. Dionysus leans over and whispers, "You're doing exceptionally little today. I'm proud of you." You smile. And as night gathers its velvet robes around the sky, someone begins to hum, not a tune, just a warm exhale wrapped in notes. The stars, finally, blink. The next morning begins not with a trumpet, but with the soft sloshing of olive oil being poured ceremoniously into a shallow marble dish. Someone, presumably under Dionysus's direction, has decided today's theme is rituals of doing nothing properly. You are summoned, gently, by a goat wearing ankle bells and a note around its neck that reads, "Please arrive late and with snacks." You oblige. Outside, Dionysus sits beneath a fig tree, carving shapes into the air with a spoon. "Today," he says, "we honor the ancient art of pointless but aesthetic tasks." He gestures toward a lineup of spa-goers engaged in activities such as arranging river pebbles into constellations no one will memorize, braiding vines into crowns, then placing them on sleeping cats, writing letters to inanimate objects. You choose, "Dear gentle spoon." You find yourself drawn to the station of repetitive but unimportant motions. It's essentially a table with various objects, shells, dried petals, tiny amphorae filled with colored sand, and your only job is to move things around until your brain stops narrating. It works. Later, Clovis invites you to a new experience, slow emergency drills. These are not for actual emergencies but for practicing gentle overreactions to minor problems. Example: what to do when your olive rolls off your plate. Step 1, gasp softly. Step 2, ponder the olive's journey. Step 3, replace it with something else and pretend nothing happened. You excel. The instructors nod, pleased. Nearby, Dionysus unveils a new chamber. The Overthinking Lounge. Its entrance is framed by questions like, what if this toga isn't my color, and did that nymph seem slightly distant earlier? Inside, cushioned divans are arranged in circular formation, each with a scroll bearing semi-philosophical nonsense like, if you nap while thinking, does the thought nap too? Can you half commit to a full idea? What if you are the background character and that's actually freeing? Historians still argue whether the Overthinking Lounge was an invention of Dionysus himself or merely a bureaucratic accident that became too popular to cancel. Midday brings the great exchange of inconsequential wisdom. Participants gather in robes and whisper timeless insights to one another with great ceremony. You overhear gems such as, always warm your sandals before winter walks. A fig tastes best after mild regret. When unsure, consult a goat. You contribute, the best way to fix something is to ignore it until it evolves. Applause follows, not loud, just enough to make the air wobble. The next stop is the snoozing oracle. She's a priestess who gives cryptic advice only while half asleep. You kneel beside her and whisper your question, should I finally finish organizing my scrolls? She responds, eyes still closed, the scrolls will sort themselves when the moon sighs. It's unclear what this means, but you're strangely reassured. As the sun begins to stretch toward its golden recliner, Dionysus hosts an impromptu seminar, The History of Leisure According to Me. He claims that hammocks were first invented by a bored cyclops with an overgrown fishing net, that the phrase, don't sweat it, originated with a Hellenistic gymnasium fire drill, and that most wars could have been avoided with a 3-hour nap and some soft cheese. Historians may disagree, he admits, but historians weren't there when I invented the nap circle. You all laugh. Even the statues seem amused. Evening descends like a plush curtain. At the edge of the spa grounds, guests gather for the slippers and secret ceremony. You're given a pair of handwoven slippers and invited to whisper one sleepy secret into the breeze. The secrets aren't kept, exactly, they're transformed into quiet inside jokes between the wind and the trees. Yours is, sometimes I pretend I understand constellations, but I'm just making shapes. You slip on the slippers. They're embroidered with tiny yawning stars. As darkness pools around the horizon, someone lights a lantern shaped like a giant snail. It leads a slow procession toward the moon garden, where white poppies bloom and scent the night like faint memories of summer. You lie down beside Clovis, who curls into a little croissant of fluff and purrs, though he is, technically, not a cat. The last thing you hear before dozing off is Dionysus, whispering into the wind. Doing nothing has always been an art. You're just finally remembering. At some point in the very early morning, though time here has the consistency of overcooked noodles, you are gently stirred awake by the subtle smell of cardamom and something vaguely philosophical. You blink up to find a satyr serenading a teacup. Not drinking from it. Just serenading it. The spa has declared today to be tea and introspection day, which sounds productive, but isn't. Your first task is to select a teacup that reflects your inner confusion. The choices include one with a spiral that never ends. One that's slightly chipped but has a great personality. One that hums when filled. One that insists it used to be a vase. You choose the hummer. It sounds like a lullaby wrapped in a shrug. Dionysus floats past, yes, floats, apparently he's testing a new wine-based levitation technique, and announces, today we steep not just leaves, but ideas. In the courtyard, a nymph dressed like an existential cloud hands you a cup of paradox pico. As you sip, you are invited to participate in mildly confusing conversations. The rules are simple. No statement can be immediately understood. Clarification is discouraged. Agreement must be expressed through eye contact and polite nods. Your partner, an elderly dryad named Melisma, opens with, "Sometimes I think I was a library in a past life, but all my books were blank." You reply, "I once organized my feelings by tea strength. Regret was oolong." You win the round. Later, you wander over to the Bureau of Understated Revelations, a tent where scribes help you write personal truths that are only slightly profound. Options on the wall include: I function best when slightly underwhelmed. Time isn't real, but snacks are. Silence is just thought wearing comfy shoes. Being liked is fine. Being left alone is better. You select one and ink it carefully onto a papyrus coaster. It's filed under stuff you can whisper to yourself in elevators. Historians still argue whether the BUR was a subtle critique of Athens' more dramatic philosophical schools, or just the result of a surplus tent and a sleepy intern with a quill. In the early afternoon, you are invited to the great staring ritual. Everyone chooses an object, a leaf, a pebble, a decorative amphora shaped like a duck, and stares at it until meaning either emerges or no longer matters. Yours is a mildly suspicious liar. You stare. It stares back. Eventually, it seems to tell you, "Stop trying so hard. Also, I'm just a liar." You thank it. Nearby, Clovis has fallen asleep in a basket of lavender and scrolls. You consider joining him, but you're gently herded into the pavilion of acceptable rambling. Each guest is encouraged to tell a story that begins nowhere, wanders freely, and resolves only if it feels like it. You launch into an anecdote about how you once mistook a philosopher for a lost fisherman, but halfway through realize you may have dreamt it. That's okay. Everyone claps gently. One man tells the story of a lost sandal that led him to the love of his life, who turned out to be a very friendly donkey. Or maybe, he adds, the donkey just reminded me of someone kind. Everyone swoons. By dusk, Dionysus organizes a toast to the things that went slightly okay. You raise your goblet with the others as he calls out. To the nap that almost happened. To the poem that rhymed unintentionally. To the conversation that looped once and ended on a sigh. To the grape that fell but did not roll. You drink. It tastes like chamomile and low expectations. Delicious. As twilight pools over the horizon, you are encouraged to write a letter to a version of yourself who lives underwater and only wakes up on Thursdays. You start with, "Dear me but damp." And by the time the ink dries, your thoughts are soft and slow again. The final activity of the evening is called collective yawning. You sit in a ring, surrounded by glowing stones, and take turns yawning until the sky follows suit. According to the schedule, this ensures optimal moonlight. Clovis leads the first yawn. It's so pure that even the stars blink slower. And just before you nod off entirely, Dionysus appears one last time, now wearing a crown of uncooked spaghetti and smelling faintly of rosewater. He bows deeply and says, "You've nearly mastered the art of gloriously doing very little. Just one more day." You drift into sleep feeling like a slightly confused teabag, steeping in peace. You wake to a gentle plop, as something lands softly on your face. It's a fig. It's been placed there with love. Possibly by Clovis, who is nowhere to be seen but whose whisker is suspiciously stuck to it. The fig is your ticket to the Festival of Near Achievements, the final full-day celebration at Dionysus's spa. The premise? To honor all the things you almost did, nearly remembered, or kind of tried. Dionysus stands atop a podium made of reclining cushions, announcing, "Let us now celebrate the unfinished, the forgotten, and the things that turned out fine anyway." First event, the Parade of Abandoned Hobbies. Participants march solemnly past the fig grove holding tools of trades they tried for a week and then, well, didn't. A centaur carries a half-carved lute. A nymph shows off a loom with only 3 lines of tapestry. You walk with your infamous scroll of things I might master, upon which the only entry is, maybe juggling? The crowd applauds with the tenderness of people who get it. Then, it's time for the Sympathetic Sighing Contest. You and several guests lie on enormous beanbags and attempt to sigh in the most validating way possible. Each sigh is judged on tone, depth, and whether it makes nearby listeners suddenly remember something vague and bittersweet. You place third. Historians still debate whether sympathetic sighing was part of Dionysian ritual theater or simply a pastime invented by overly sensitive satyrs during wine shortages. After lunch, an event called Snack First, Decisions Later, you're ushered into a gently wobbling amphitheater made of moss and sandalwood. It's time for tales of the almost epic. One by one, spa-goers share tales of events that nearly mattered. A philosopher once nearly won a debate with Plato, but sneezed at the crucial moment. An inventor had a design for underwater scrolls, but the ink floated away. A goat says nothing, but the way he chews suggests a saga. Your tale. You once tried to invent edible sandals. You got as far as marzipan straps before realizing the structural issues. The audience sighs with admiration. Outside, in a side garden called the Zone of Mutual Forgetting, you and a stranger take turns naming things you're willing to let go of. I no longer need to pretend I like olives, you confess. I release the pressure to always know where I put my second sandal, they reply. Together, you bury these confessions in the soil, where tiny flowers sprout immediately. They smell like closure. Then it's time for the apology parade, but not the intense kind. This one's for low-stakes mishaps. Guests wear signs like, "Sorry I took the last honeyed date." "Sorry I mispronounced nymph for 4 days." "Sorry I mistook your laurel crown for a salad." You join in, donning a placard that reads, "Sorry I kept calling Clovis a cat." Somewhere nearby, Clovis squints approvingly. As dusk settles, Dionysus hosts a small gathering called the What If Salon. Guests are encouraged to share alternate versions of their own myths, lives they might have led, things they might have become. You share that in another timeline, you're a librarian in a tower made entirely of dried herbs. Your only responsibility is ensuring that no one sneezes too loudly. A dryad suggests she was once a famous poet whose works were all forgotten, but that's fine because they were mostly about bread. A satyr insists that in another life, he was a river who gave excellent advice but only to fish. There's no need to agree or question. It all makes a strange kind of sleepy sense. The sky shifts slowly into velvet. Dionysus, seated on a throne of unclaimed cushions, looks around at his guests and says with mock solemnity, "If you have learned nothing here, then you've learned correctly." He raises a goblet filled with something that tastes like dreams and warm spoons. "To all the naps you almost took," he says. To the laughter that bubbled up but didn't interrupt. To the spa you never expected, and the myth you now belong to. Clovis jumps onto your lap and settles into a perfect circle. And though the stars blink overhead and the wind smells faintly of time and old parchment, it is the quiet within you that feels most significant. Night deepens, but sleep holds off, hovering politely like a well-mannered ghost. You lie on a bed of down-stuffed laurel leaves in your open-air chamber, listening to the hush of moonlit nonsense floating in from the gardens. Tonight, the spa holds its closing ritual, the ceremony of very slight enlightenment. You and the other guests shuffle, drowsy and content, into the central courtyard. The torchlight is soft, more like a glow of remembered candlelight than fire, and the air hums with lyres being strummed in a rhythm that seems suspiciously like snoring. Dionysus arrives wearing a robe fashioned from picnic blankets and faintly glowing with bioluminescent grapes. His voice, gentle and meandering, drifts across the assembly like fog rolling off a lazy hill. "You've journeyed far," he begins, from confusion to slightly calmer confusion. The crowd nods. Someone sneezes into a pillow. Clovis blinks slowly at a nearby sandal. Dionysus beckons each guest forward to receive a final parting gift, a compliment that makes you go, huh. Yours? You have the quiet determination of a moss-covered staircase. You're not sure what it means, but it feels right. Other compliments overheard. Your thoughts echo in comforting shapes. You remind me of a question I once forgot to ask. Your presence is like lukewarm tea, surprisingly satisfying. You all bow solemnly. Now, for the final shared activity, mildly meditative wandering. You are handed a gently glowing pebble, yours flickers slightly when held, and encouraged to go wherever the night invites you, as long as it's vaguely that way. A goat nods in the distance, as if to second this advice. You walk past the fountain that burbles in iambic pentameter. Past the hammock grove, where some guests have turned into gentle snores. Past the amphora that plays low-volume lullabies about sea foam and socks. The pebble in your palm warms subtly with every step, pulsing in time with your slowing thoughts. You sit at last beneath a tree whose branches form the shape of a shrug. Its leaves emit the soft scent of forgotten promises and bakery air. It seems a good place to reflect. You remember how strange this journey began, uncertain, slightly skeptical. Now here you are, having attended a spa for myths, dreamed in herbal tea, and debated with a duck-shaped vase. Historians still argue whether this entire ritual had therapeutic value or if it was just an elaborate excuse to nap poetically. Either way, you feel like a story folded into itself, waiting to be retold in someone else's dreams. The final bell, a hollow chime from a conch shell, echoes once, signaling the close of your mythic retreat. You find your resting place once more, wrap yourself in a blanket the color of second thoughts, and lie down beside Clovis, who has declared your shoulder public property. Above you, the stars lazily arrange themselves into constellations that don't have names, just feelings. Your eyelids flutter, thoughts blur at the edges, and now it's time for sleep. Let everything slow now. Let your breath ease itself into a rhythm that doesn't require supervision. Let your limbs loosen like scrolls unrolling on a quiet library table. There's no need to hold the thread of thought anymore, it's happy to drift wherever it pleases. The air has cooled slightly, just enough to make the blanket feel like a soft decision you're glad you made. The sounds around you, leaves sighing, a distant owl that might actually be a very persuasive actor, the low murmur of mythic dreams being shared across pillows, they all fold into a background so gentle it barely counts as noise. Dionysus, somewhere far off, is probably asleep too now. Or maybe he's turned into a cloud, gently raining wine over someone else's story. It doesn't matter. He'll be back when the world needs another nap. You've done very well. You've wandered a place that asked nothing of you but curiosity, that offered you absurdity wrapped in comfort, and that gave you a mirror which didn't need to reflect anything you weren't ready to see. There is peace here, not because the world stopped spinning, but because, for a while, it was okay to spin with it, lazily, like a fig rolling off a plate and landing somewhere soft. Your story is tucked in now, the pages turning themselves. So go ahead. Close your eyes. Let go of the edges. You've arrived. Sleep well, soft traveler.